His soul is right here in hell as he is in the state of mortal sin. And though he does not physically feel the pains that you see him experiencing, it is only the thin veil of life that keeps him from feeling that pain. If he passes to eternity now, he will experience the pain that you see. He is already in hell. Such are the words of the angel of John Bosco to St. John Bosco. We know much about hell. Look at our modern stories, our modern movies. Evil is throughout them because evil is part of our lives today. It's not something that we come into contact with, something that we experience on the outside. It's something that we live. Everyone knows the reality of hell, and there's no point in trying to deny it. One of the doctrines concerning hell, you don't have to believe in hell in order to go there. It's not a requirement. All that is necessary is death in the state of mortal sin. That is all that is necessary. And everyone who dies in the state of mortal sin will infallibly go to hell. And not one of those souls shall be forgiven once they've entered into eternity. St. Gregory the Great, who became Pope in the year 590 A.D., died in the year 604 A.D., so a little more than 1,400 years ago. Before he became Pope, he had a vision of a 5-year-old boy. And this 5-year-old boy had been taught by his parents to blaspheme God. He reached the age of reason, he blasphemed God. His first act of reason. He died in an accident, and the boy went to hell. And John Bosco saw the 5-year-old boy burning in hell. That was 1,400 years ago. That boy still burns today. He will never be forgiven. He will never get out. St. John Bosco, an 8-year-old boy in his school, who died after committing some mortal sin, burning in hell after his first mortal sin. John Bosco, too, saw him in a vision. As Moses says in his sermon in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 32, God speaks. A fire is kindled in my wrath, says God, and shall burn even to the lowest hell, and shall devour the earth with her increase, and shall burn the foundations of the mountains. I will heap evils upon them, and I will spend my arrows amongst them. They shall be consumed with famine, and birds shall devour them with a most bitter bite. I will send the teeth of beasts upon them, and with the fury of creatures that trail upon the earth, and of serpents without the sword shall lay them waste, and terror within. On the outside the sword shall lay them to waste, and there shall be terror within. It is not to be forgotten that the souls in hell live in an indescribable, infinite terror. That it vibrates their whole being. Terror within. Both, who is there, says Moses, inspired by God, speaking his last sermon. Without the sword shall lay them to waste, and terror within. Both the young man and the virgin, the sucking child with the man of years. They are all there. In our modern age, we don't like to consider the reality of hell. It's uncomfortable for us. All of us it is, because we know that there is a danger of each one of us, priests, bishops, popes, and faithful alike. There is a danger for each one of us to fall into that place if we find ourselves in the state of mortal sin and then meet death and judgment in that condition. And so we're not comfortable when we hear about it. We don't want to hear about the reality of the tortures of this place. Our Lady of Fatima showed a 7-year-old girl the fires of hell. He brought a 7-year-old girl named Jacinta. She brought her into hell. And she showed Jacinta the souls burning there. Today, as one of our priests pointed out about 15 years ago, she will be accused of, the Blessed Virgin Mary will be accused of child abuse. showing a little girl hell. She did. And Jacinta, after that vision of hell, was so affected by it that she devoted all the remainder of her short life to praying that souls not go there. That's what she devoted the rest of her life to, after seeing the souls burning in hell at the age of 7. We shouldn't be saying these things to the young, and yet we bring our young to movies that are bad for them. The Blessed Virgin showed the young these things. Perhaps those that think we shouldn't be saying these things in the presence of the young, maybe it's because of a guilty conscience. And that we realize that if we soon pass to death, maybe we will not be ready to meet our God. But He shall come, and He is present in hell. So says sacred Scripture. I shall bring the sword, and I shall spend my arrows amongst them. And my breath shall be as a torrent of fire, says the Book of Wisdom, breathing fire and brimstone upon the damned. God is present as fire and brimstone. He's present swinging His sword. He's present shooting His arrows amongst the damned. And note that each of these passages refers not only to the torture of hell, but to its eternity. I will spend my arrows amongst them. When does God run out of arrows? I will make my sword drunk with blood. Will there ever be enough blood to satisfy His sword? And the answer is no. And it is also said here in the book of Deuteronomy for the first time in sacred Scripture, but it is repeated many other times. As he gets to the end of this consideration, speaking from the voice of God about what God is going to do to the damned, he says, remember, vengeance is mine, and I shall repay them in due time. A little later on, Moses says in the sermon that God slays the damned in His own time, because He has prepared a special vengeance. And He doesn't simply kill them after their first sin necessarily, though He does some. But He waits. Waits because of the infinite wrath of His justice. Just as His mercy is infinite to those that beg forgiveness before death, so His wrath is infinite towards those that do not. And He is preparing a special torture, says Moses. And remember this concerning the damned. Every sin receives its own torture in hell. Not only mortal sins, but venial sins. Every single one. And that it is wise even for the damned to stop sinning, because of the fact that each new sin they add adds an infinite hell to their own torture and their own punishment. So that the man who has committed 100,000 sins against purity, for instance, and the man that is considered 100,001, the one that has committed 100,001 will suffer infinitely more than the one who committed 100,000. Each individual sin receives its own infinite punishment, and everyone is counted. That is why the devil teaches foolishness to the damned, to the souls that live in the state of mortal sin. Oh, you're going to go to hell, so it doesn't matter. Commit another sin and another sin and another sin. But we discover, when entering into hell, that it does matter. Even amongst the damned. Every single sin receives its